Generali, partner di vita.
In un mondo che non sta mai fermo, il bello è avere sempre nuove soluzioni e continuare a crearne. Any Life Station, puoi farci anche rifornimento.
Noi di Conad siamo vicino a Claudia, che cerca convenienza in ogni suo acquisto, dagli alimenti più freschi ai prodotti per la casa, per la salute e per il benessere. Abbiamo tanti Conad, tutti diversi, per essere vicino alle vostre esigenze.
Investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Generali, partner di vita.
In un mondo che non sta mai fermo, il bello è avere sempre nuove soluzioni e continuare a crearne. Any Life Station, puoi farci anche rifornimento.
Noi di Conad siamo vicino a Claudia, che cerca convenienza in ogni suo acquisto, dagli alimenti più freschi ai prodotti per la casa, per la salute e per il benessere. Abbiamo tanti Conad, tutti diversi, per essere vicino alle vostre esigenze.
Investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Buongiorno, siamo qui per un
Good morning. Welcome to this session where we will talk about recovering enterprises. This debate is considered very important at the meeting, and I agree with this because enterprises and companies will play a major role in the coming season, in the fall season. We have today distinguished representatives of the corporate world. We have Emanuela Lucchini, Attilio Briccola, Carlo Bonomi, and Guido Bardelli.
poi via via.
Then I will introduce each speaker individually. I was saying that this debate is particularly important because if we could go back in time before the pandemic and if we could ask a panel of observers or journalists, would there be a pandemic that will last more than a year and a half, and what will be the situation of Italian companies? Well, many would have talked about very negative results. On the other hand, the Italian companies showed resilience and resistance much beyond any expectations, even the more pessimistic expectations, because we have remained the second manufacturing country in Europe, and that's really a big result. So I would like to emphasize the role of the companies in this very difficult time. And I normally use a metaphor. I see companies as a kind of floor, a floor that could support us, and another kind of floor is represented by families, but that's another story. So this floor could support us and help us to talk about recovery. We are discussing now whether we will have a GDP increase by 5 or even 6%. So the prospect is quite positive at the moment. And most importantly, there are a couple of points that will have to be considered. There is entrepreneurial spirit that has demonstrated to be solid. And then there's a cycle of public investment that is unprecedented in Italy that we may summarize in the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. So what should be the coordination of this particular and delicate stage? It is not enough to have investments, because mistakes may be made when people spend money. It's not just by saving that people don't make mistakes. So what will be the role of companies and representatives and decision makers in this very delicate stage? So let's start with Ms. Lucchini. She has 4 children, president of ICI Caldaie. She is member of the board and in Confindustria. And we would like to ask her to tell us about her activities, her business, and the issues that she thinks may arise. Thank you. It is an honor for me to be here to talk about small enterprise in Italy, what we could understand in this period. I would like to go through a report that we have prepared. My presentation will be structured into 4 questions. What has happened? What should we expect? What are the factors characterizing the new reality, and how should we equip ourselves? So what has happened from our point of view? After more than 10 years of crisis, we've had economic crisis and then the pandemic. Today, we have further stress caused by the lack of raw materials. 2021 should finish, as we said at the beginning, with a recovery to values equal to those before the crisis. So we've had some recovery, and we've had an increase in orders over the last few months. So 2022 should be the year of recovery. We will start growing again. That's what we hope, and everything makes us think that that will be the case. So let's analyze the factors behind this crisis. The increase in raw materials and supply seemed to be a speculative phenomenon at the beginning, but it is a sort of discontinuity now that has slowed down and sometimes hindered the recovery of 2021. This phenomenon will cause great changes. Ferrous materials will have to keep higher prices than those we have been used to for years. And now it is evident that the raw material production is precarious in Europe. Steel plants must increase their margins to adjust their plant to more environmentally friendly production. And microchips producers are concentrated in Asia, and they cannot respond to the demand. Also, environmental awareness has changed, and this is generating transition choices. It has implied a different design of our products and changes in production plants. 10 years ago already, some research plants started to use hydrogen as the future fuel. And then connection and digital development have increasingly changed our product. Therefore, a change in our organization has been necessary, and it cannot be postponed anymore, even in our business models. So that's why we try to imagine how we can contribute to the future with technologies linked to the energy used in industrial processes, that is the areas where we operate. So what should we expect? After years of difficulties, we cannot just talk about crisis. This is a change of reality that it is so profound that it can be compared to the end of the Ice Age. It is not possible to maintain companies and keep companies sustainable with models that come from 10 years ago. They have to be ready to face a completely new reality. Soon after the health emergency, we have to face an unprecedented economic emergency, and we realized that there are many factors that are changing manufacturing in an irreversible way, and radical change is needed to prevent our companies from getting obsolete. So we are now shifting from talking about the change to implementing actions. So what are the factors characterizing this new reality? We have the environment. This is not just an environmental awareness that is changing, but it is a rebellion of our climate against the impact of human activities. We have to respond and to be accountable for every single watt used without replacing this or merging this with some renewable sources. And it means that we'll have to use hydrogen in the future. Then connectivity and strengthen the performance of our products. But on the other hand, our clients have changed their demands, and they do not just ask machines, they ask solutions. And then the human factor, this is fundamental. The factory must be interconnected with all the other areas. There's not just individual departments. So workers' work is not disconnected from office workers' work. Everything is connected, and it is necessary to develop a working method with well-defined criteria to fulfill the initial desire of our companies. And this initial desire remains the engine of development for any entrepreneurial activity. If we've lost it, it has to be recovered urgently. And then the business person themselves must start setting their work in a different way, following their intuitions. We have to go back to school to allow everyone that is interested in collaborating to do so, so that those coming after us will know how to give continuity and to keep developing our companies and our businesses. Hierarchical models are not tenable anymore. We can consider Google, for example. Briefly, our companies have to work on cross-cutting projects to increase the contributions of the people involved in the projects. How can we organize ourselves to do all this? Every company, every business should change their business model as if they were a startup. Research and development should be considered with other companies and other research institutes that are truly involved in the results of their studies. What about the management, corporate management after the crisis? Corporate management has been too rigid in our company historically, and this is proving to be inadequate to respond to the needs of contemporary business. We have started to fight against cultural resistance and to eliminate hierarchies, to allow for a dialogue with clients and to make a function, the factory functioning. Every person working in a company must understand that their own little part is part of a whole, and the consequences of their work and their planning are inevitable. So we have to change the methods in management and production, inspiring us with winning techniques. For example, the continuous improving methods of Toyota that we are experimenting, shared production, or development of services that will focus on usage. Investing in young people. After 2 years of standstill, where we have not invested so much in young people, now there are cases where young graduates are being hired. So we need schemes to involve them in a smarter way. It is necessary to change profoundly our methods. We need artificial intelligent algorithms, planning project models, and the use of the digital power must all be considered. So to do this, we need to understand what kind of features we'll have and skills we'll have to have the young people that we are going to hire, to define a learning scheme, and also to have a challenging and fascinating business relationship. For example, we have a pre-competitive research lab that is part of a manufacturing plant, and this offers many young people the possibility to focus on issues related to sustainability and to collaborate with the big companies and research centers all over Europe. Here, young researchers and PhD students from different universities have been involved to favor planning and simulation with the genetic algorithms to be able to improve quickly and continuously our machines. We continue to focus on ambitious programs about the future of our planet so that it will really become the basis to attract young talent. And then let's talk about education, and I'm going to conclude. It is necessary to invest in continuous education, long-lasting education for all the people, and it is also necessary to guarantee high-level competencies in an ambitious fashion. We follow a Toyota slogan: men and women will learn as long as they live, and companies will live as long as they learn. So they have to continue a progression in getting closer to schools and universities. There must be a narrow gap between these and companies. Companies are the result of a desire, of an intuition, of a vision, and it spreads in the company, and it becomes history, and it contributes to construct an economic texture that is able to face its time and its challenges. But how? Well, we talked about new technologies, and we hope that hydrogen will be applied in the stationary field and also in heavy transport. It is an early stage, but it is necessary to promote all the attempts and to adjust and to correct where there may be mistakes. Transition is not possible if we follow the same things, the same methods, just in a little bit a better way. Our companies will have to have better tools to design plans, and we need vision for imagining the future. We have to dare, we have to try to do things, and energetic transition now cannot be stopped. More environmentally friendly sources are necessary. This can contribute to recovery and sustainability. We, as Italians and Europeans, are the first in the world in this respect. The energetic transition cannot be stopped, not just because we are slowly but inevitably educating ourselves to reduce environmental impact, but also because Europe, with its companies, will be the protagonist of this change. And I'm saying this with respect to the two-decade experience of big projects in Europe with big companies that we have been proposing. And I can say on the basis of this that we have so many things, so many secrets that we are getting out of the closet. I'm concluding. Our companies must be taken out of isolation, having a similar system to that of Germany and Spain. Thanks to collaboration, it is possible to give way to discontinuous innovation. We have to do what happened in Barshim and Tamburi, the idea to share gold and multiply it, adding to one's satisfaction and also success through the success of the others. As I have a question for our President. Could the National Recovery and Resilience Plan support to develop supply chains? How can we do this with a virtuous cycle? The old concept of production districts and supply chain should be improved and renewed. We are not satisfied sometimes of the mechanisms that are used in the Horizon projects. Now, the PNRR, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, is being analyzed, and I think that it contains interesting chapters for our companies. How can we use it, and when can we use it? Well, we will be able to do so thanks to all the economic resources that it will make available to us. Sorry for being so long. Thank you.
Attilio Briccola.
Attilio Briccola. He also has 4 children, and his surname Briccola was changed in the name of his bread, Brics. He produces bags and suitcases. He started in 1984, and he is one of the founders of the Compagnia delle Opere. So I think that's already enough to give you an overview of what he does. Thank you for inviting me here at the meeting today. I will try to share with you my experience, the experience of my company during the pandemic. And, obviously, since we produce traveling apparels, this actually really hit us hard. The Brics was founded by my father in 1952, so we will celebrate its 70th anniversary next year. It is a family-run company. I am the 8th of 9 brothers, 6 of which work in the company, and I'm the CEO at the moment. And our core business is traveling suitcases, trolleys in particular. Our turnover before the pandemic was of 50 million, but it was half that amount in 2020. We have plants in Germany, Switzerland, China, and the United States. That's our first market. And, fortunately, that market is recovering at the moment. As many entrepreneurs, at the beginning, I was really enraged by the pandemic. The situation was getting worse and worse, starting from the Asian market. markets. So it was unavoidable that Europe and the United States would have met the same difficulties with the end of any flying possibilities. This our market was completely blocked. So then orders were cancelled, payments were not honored, and well, I am usually very optimistic, but this time I was really scared, and my fear was often expressed through my rage, the way I reacted to things. The president of the Compagnia delle Opere in Como asked me if I wanted to be part of the board of Industries for Excellence. I accepted, even though I had a few doubts and at the beginning, and this has been a very important experience for me. I met so many entrepreneurs whom I already met in the past, but now I can really call them my friends, and this really helped me to overcome this fear and made me find my energies and my motivations in order to start again as a manager and start to actually facing the difficulties we had at the moment. For instance, there was a dialogue on state funds, how different credit institutions would behave, because obviously even though there are the same laws for every institution, then obviously it was very difficult to have different agreements with them. Then again, problems linked with human resources, and then I also organized a meeting every Wednesday on Zoom, obviously, because it was really important to keep talking to the people of my company, even though they were working for home. And I was well, in the past I thought that sustainability was not that important, but now I really realize that sustainability rhymes with competitivity. So, well, in the situation of the company was getting worse. The suitcase sector registered a decrease by 70%, and the decrease in our turnover for my company and the other companies of the sector was about 50 to 60%. Nevertheless, in this terrible situation, because this is actually a very, very difficult situation, and thanks to my experience with the Compagnia delle Opere in Como, we managed to take very important decisions for the future. As for instance, we took part in a tender for a shop in the shopping gallery in Milan. We already had a shop there, but the contract has expired, and so now there are tenders in order to actually have to be able to rent a shop there, and well, the rent is really, really high at the moment. And we also have a new strategic plan for 2025 that involves all our collaborators, redefining vision and mission and organizational model. All these decisions were taken with hope in the future, and this hope was the result of my experience in this board of Industries for Excellence. And I realized that we have a responsibility, a social responsibility as managers and entrepreneurs. First of all, the existence of the company in itself. So the social responsibility is linked with our commitment in studying products, company organization, and market development. So my brothers and me are really doing this. We are really trying to find a global answer to the global reaction to this situation. This extraordinary experience showed that there is a level where individual single enterprises or just a few companies working together are not enough. There is the need to have bigger, wider bodies, and it is thanks to them that the projects of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan can actually be implemented. So what is the role of these different levels, of these different bodies? So, well, to represent the enterprises in this recovery phase.
Allora, abbiamo voluto iniziare
So we started with the experiences of two entrepreneurs, and I said that they both have 5 children, 4 children each. So, well, so to speak, they have quite a complex life, everyday life, but they also play a very important role for their co-workers and for the economy of our country. So, well, this is important because enterprises in Italy are a life project in a way. Small and medium enterprises are a part of the lives of many people who chose a responsibility, who chose a strong commitment, who chose to really be involved personally, and this brings us back to the title of the meeting, that goes beyond their own personal sphere. So now let's move to those who represent the different bodies. So we have Guido Bardelli, president of Compagnia, delle Opere, since February 2020. And then we will have Claudio Bonomi. But first, I will just go back to Mr. Briccola's question, and I'm asking this role, representative role, what is the importance of this role? What can you do in this situation? I would like to thank the meeting for organizing this session, and we were really glad to participate because it is important in this difficult moment, in this complex moment. And I will use this word very often, complexity, because it really depicts the situation we are in at the moment. Well, even in this very difficult moment, it is important, before we try to find quick answers to our problems, we need to understand what is really happening. Why, for instance, didn't the floor cave in? So, well, there is some criticism to those who were particularly those who didn't have really a vision of what could have happened. So we needed to really see the value of what happened. Those who were too pessimistic didn't help the situation. We needed to find the right questions and understand them very well. Our president Bernard Shaw's before the pandemic, but already in times of crisis in 2008, in a very dramatic moment, always reminded us that we had to look for the right questions before finding answers. And I believe that this very complex moment is really the starting point for all this. We cannot find quick answers as to what awaits us in the near future. We need to understand the debate of today with the presence of President Bonomi. He knows we have really insisted for him to be here today with us. So, well, that's the kind of help, of support we wanted to provide. Secondly, in order to understand what happened, we need to really look at what happened, listened to what happened. So this is an example. The first method we have to apply before we reach any conclusions is to be patient and to listen. And I really insisted that Emanuela, Lucchini, and Mr. Briccola were here today with their experiences, because their experiences were really interesting for me. participated in many different webinars, and it is interesting to really know what many enterprises did. And I think President Bonomi will confirm this. So, during the pandemic, during the COVID crisis, there were many initiatives. But there were mainly, obviously, web initiatives. But, well, entrepreneurs wanted really to open up a dialogue. They wanted to understand what was happening, what were the emergency rules and laws that were being passed. So these two experiences really impressed me because both, and this is, I say, a very important starting point, in both cases, moving from a social responsibility, and this is my personal observation, so this floor did not cave in because there were some tiles that individually managed not to cave in. So, well, it was so to speak, a social responsibility when Attilio talks about his Wednesday's meeting with his friends, his co-workers. This is extremely important. Italian enterprises have always had a very strong human capital, so this is a fundamental characteristic of the Italian enterprise that has been attracting also the interest of foreign entrepreneurs. So these tiles actually were strong enough, and I'm concluded that maybe we will have a few questions or a small dialogue at the end, a small debate at the end. But these intermediate levels, the social bodies mentioned by President Mattarella yesterday, because where there are dynamics, where there is a liveliness, that is a social body. So we need to look at new social bodies and these new realities in this very difficult moment. So what is most important is that these tiles of this floor actually saw themselves as a part of the floor, as a whole. So, well, we cannot move from a personal, individualistic attitude to a more social attitude. Feeling part of a bigger reality is a basic point for entrepreneurs who really run their risks, and this crisis helped professionals and entrepreneurs to understand what it means to be a tile in a floor. So you are an individual with needs, with risks that need to be taken, as Emanuela said, and as many other entrepreneurs did. The example of the shop in the shopping gallery in Milan is very clear in this sense. But on the other hand, there is also a dialogue, a debate. So I really want to understand what is happening, what awaits us, and it is always this relationship between the tile and the floor that is important. It doesn't change with time. It is a relationship that is stable in a way over time. What does this mean for enterprises and social bodies? So this is the main challenge that we need to meet. And I think that today with Dario De Vico and President Bonomi will help us understand better. Thank you.
Allora,
Thank you, President Bonomi. In an early stage of this difficult season, agency representativeness has been of added value with the protocol between unions and companies that have favored certain behaviors, correct behaviors in a difficult time. And that was when representation gives something more than individual stances. Now this link has been interrupted. So the question is, what is representation useful for? Do we just need to have a law that obliges us, but there's not real need? Because representation in a very difficult time like a pandemic one, it seems to lose responsibility. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I must admit that I have been surprised myself, and I was quite surprised by the reaction of some social bodies. There has been very, very difficult times in our country. We all remember the moments that we experienced during the pandemic. More than 128,000 victims in our country. We should remember this number because that will make us more responsible. As you said, Mr. Vico, there was a very difficult time, and we sat at a table, we met, and we kept the country united. So, Guido, I agree with you when you refer to the point made by President of the Republic yesterday. Is mentioned the social bodies and the issue, the idea of obligation, because everybody talks about rights, but they forget about their social obligations. So in the more dramatic moment of the pandemic, we met with the representative bodies, and we found a way to keep our country united. If we want to respond to inequalities, and we're all convinced that we have to do this, if we want to go through digital environmental transition, we need resources. And the economic way is the only way that can give us resources, because our public debt is a monster debt. And I have been surprised when, given the possibility to meet and to start a dialogue on how to go ahead with our country and to face the two big issues that we have, that is the health issue and then the reform issue and the parties that may stop our reforms. Well, we have failed, and I include in this myself, even if I might say I'm not guilty because I've always been available to participate in this debate. But the unions have made big mistake, because altogether we could have built what our fathers built with TBC. In 1966, there was the obligation to vaccinate against poliomyelitis, and that was done. And now there should be the same responsibility. Think about all the children that were saved thanks to this vaccine. I remember that 1 year of debate resulted in 10,000 victims among children for that. And we are now in the same situation. We are now almost indifferent before numbers. There are 50 casualties every day, and we see that people without a vaccine are the most affected. And so we have the social obligation to meet and to think about this and find solutions. I was available, I'm available today, I will be available tomorrow, but we don't have time. We have a big responsibility as intermediate levels, and our responsibilities go beyond our memberships, our associations. Even in Confindustria, not all members agree on this, but I have a responsibility. I prefer to have one member less, but I want to do what our country needs.
Traduco un po', diciamo.
So what you're saying is that you can't understand why the unions have followed minority trends, such as the people against vaccines. And they were against the laws that could stop some processes. Then our Minister Orlando is considered to be more flexible in a way, at least this is the perception of journalists. So what is your perception? Well, it's not me, but that would be too easy. But when I hear and read the interventions by Mr. Pezzotta, that is a member of unions, and they say that the unions are making a mistake. So I think that they really understand what's going on. I mean, it is natural to have conflicts and debates, and they know what their role is about and what my role is about and what Mr. Landini's, Barra, and Bombardieri should do. We have a social role that we have to fulfill. And it is far too easy to postpone debates about laws or just being against laws to postpone their approval. We see opposition within the same parties that it is hard to have a law in a short time. We have the possibility today to have a meeting with the unions and to update safety protocols. We've done it in the most difficult moment. Why can't we do it today? Would you be available this afternoon? Well, I'm available right now. If union representatives want to come, I can do this on the fly. So if there is an agreement and then this is approved in terms of law, that's better, absolutely. But then we have to give answers to the people in our factories, in our companies, because as our colleague said, we are a community. That's the factor that kept our floor up. We are a community with our families, with the works done by our companies, and unfortunately, the ideology of being entrepreneurs have been continued, and not by mistake, not by chance, companies have kept up. And why is it so? Because we are a community. We share difficulties. My company is in Mirandola. We had floodings, earthquakes, the pandemic, and our company remained open during the pandemic. I asked our staff, that it's mostly women, that is with children at home, their husbands at home. We all had fear. So I said, I don't oblige anyone, but we make products that can save lives. So everybody is free to choose what they want to do. The day after, all the staff was there. They understood what their responsibility was about towards a collectivity. And that's what we have lost. Yes, we are a community, but we have to consider this, that is, casualties in the workplace is something terrible, is something that cannot be accepted. There have been particularly serious situations due to lack of organization of safety standards. So can we try to change this in the relationship with the unions and the companies instead of just reporting casualties when they happen? Well, I agree that should be done, but I mean, it's not true that there was an increase in casualties at the workplace, but even just with one casualty, that's not acceptable. Well, in 2018, we signed the factory agreement with the active participation of our staff. So we have to try to implement concrete actions. We have to have equal conditions between the managers and the workers, and that's safety. We don't want to report after the problems. I want to know before if a safety system has been deactivated in a machine. So let's work together again. And in safety standards, that must be done. I'm ready. Tomorrow, I'm ready to sign with the unions in the active direct participation to organize safety for the staff in the company. Will all your members, all the members of Confindustria agree with this? I don't know if they all agree, but my responsibility in this moment towards the country comes before anything else. My members certainly will agree. Let's consider the number of accidents, and there are very, very little in manufacturing. Manufacturing is always under the spotlight, but even the latest figures about INAIL, 71% of companies that are not in line with the protocols and the laws, but how many companies have been checked? Well, that's another point, because if there is a lack of safety standards, that's a scandal. Even just one case is unacceptable. Yes, we agree with that. Talking about scandals, the issue of bottlenecks is now very much debated. There are unemployment issues, but also entrepreneurs that cannot hire people. Some people say that this is propaganda because entrepreneurs look for mild workers that can adapt to any condition, and on the other side, people say that no, there's no work, there's no jobs. And so some series of bottlenecks have been defined, truck drivers, chefs and cooks, many sectors. So let's try to provide a constructive observation in this respect as well, and go beyond just criticism. So how can we find people and hire them? Well, the figures were provided by the Italian Institute for Statistics. 1.4% of lack of employment in the industry. That is 300,000 people that are needed and not being hired. And then Il Sole 24 Ore started the campaign because some other people said, well, that's not true. And we're trying to demonstrate the numbers are neutral. They don't push one side or the other. Here, there are many problems, many bottlenecks that should be faced. First of all, schools. And I would like to refer to what I mentioned before. Schools are reopening in 3 weeks' time. I have just 3 children, not 4. I don't know if that's the same. But we are back to the situation where we were last year. We did nothing. We had the future of our country, and the union says no to the Green Pass. 117,000 teachers do not have the vaccine, and that's already speaks by itself. We as Confindustria made mistakes with respect to the school, thinking that it was something that was far away from our factories. But today we realize that there is a lack of skills and profiles that can match the change in dynamics mentioned by both Attilio and Emanuela. The 4.0 industry, an industry that is changing, obviously requires new competencies that are not provided by our schools. School reforms have always been done in favor of those who were working there and not those that were attending classes. And we've tried to make up for this. But, you know, comparing with Germany, we have a very poor results, and also other issues related to the involvement of girls and women in scientific subjects. So we're now 10 points below, considering the European average, in terms of women's participation in the professional world, not to mention salary. So I go back to the first question posed by Emanuela. The National Recovery and Resilience Plan can help us a lot because the structural reforms that are needed to our country are included there to deal with the bottlenecks. But it's not just about placing 4 billion euros to hire people in agencies, job agencies that never worked. Does anybody find a job in a job agency, in an employment agency? I don't know anyone. So we are wasting our money. What about the citizenship income? We are against poverty. We want to fight against poverty. We've always said this. 1 million more poor people last year, and we have to provide answers. But active policies would have been a great failure. But we had the sociology that came from Mississippi, talked about the navigator, and then went back to the Mississippi, and we spent a lot of money with these navigators, and then we don't know what to do with this. And we don't want just to see things negatively, but we know about the market. We see things, what happens, and we are around the world with our suitcase. You see that we use suitcases because we sell our products, so we know about this. We are available to a country, and we're not saying that the country must do what we say, but we acknowledge the primacy of politics. Politics follow the general interest, and we follow individual interests, specific interests.
Giornale concorrente.
You gave a very interesting interview to a newspaper, which is not mine anyway. You said that young people should be paid more, but this didn't happen. No, it didn't happen, unfortunately. We have younger women who always were the weakest, so to speak, part of our labor market. He talked about this at the assembly of Confindustria last year. Young people and women. We needed to pay more young people and to pay women better. So this is a cultural process that we need to carry forward. We need to continue along this path. We need to actually create this idea of community, a community which is inclusive, which is modern. There are gender differences, there are different skills, there are differences that are due to the geographical area. But, well, on Tuesday, we will have here 4 leaders, Giuseppe Conte, Letta, Meloni, and Salvini. Do you meet with them? Do you speak to them? Yes, we have a dialogue with all political parties. We explain what are the directives that the country needs. But you know what really is a pity from my point of view? That our country doesn't seem to be able to face reality. What kept the country together during the crisis? The manufacturing industry. So, which was the one that did not collapse. So any other country would have, so to speak, paid more attention to the manufacturing industry as the most important asset of the country. We didn't do that in Italy. Minister Orlandi and his secretary Todd said or tried to hit, in a way, enterprises with a decree because there were 2 or 3, well, unfortunate cases that had completely different origins. So we are talking about the fact that a few enterprises decided to some of their employees, as for instance the case of Campi di Bisenzio, and this led to well, a draft decree that is in a way some kind of punishment against enterprises, because yes, we know that it is terrible to actually send a WhatsApp message to your employee, you know, if you want to actually let them off. But we have actually hired 400,000 people more. So, well, everyone were speaking about people being laid off, but we've actually hired 400,000 people more. 4.8% is the increase of the GDP, and we are actually investing. So we should be protected as an asset. And now they tell me that this decree will be passed because the enterprises are not correct. Okay, then now we can ask the government to pay back all the debt that the government has with the private sector. You should have, the state should have closed public and mixed enterprises, but it didn't. It only went, the measures went only against private enterprises. And well, the point is that politicians are really attached to their positions, and so if the government asks us to be correct, it should start to be correct in what the government itself does. So enterprises need financial resources. So do you fear that the action of political parties in the next few months, taking into account that there are also elections in some municipalities, and you know that in Italy, so also small elections are really important because we always take a single episode and turn it into a national case. So the action of the government could be compromised by the legitimate democratic game of political parties that sometimes do not solve the real problems. Yes, I'm really worried because we have two important events, administrative elections in many important cities, Bologna, Milan, Rome, Naples, Turin. So it is really something big in terms of elections. And then on the 3rd of August, the white semester started for the election of the head of state. So, well, I must say that I am really worried because I fear that the action of the government in terms of reforms is actually slowed down because there are very different positions on very different themes and issues, but we have to carry out reforms, political activities, reforms on competitiveness, and this is extremely important for our country, a reform on social welfare, and this is something we cannot actually neglect. We have a few changes in terms of retiring age, and so we have a lot of reforms that have to be carried out for the state, for the economy, for our citizens, and I fear that the action of the government could be stopped next autumn, and we cannot really afford this because of the commitment that we have met in Europe for the funds for our national resilience and recovery plan, and well, this is actually our last chance, not to say a historical opportunity, and we cannot miss it. We need to create a modern state, an efficient and inclusive state. So this is something that really worries me. And, well, we do not want to express any kind of judgment on the government. We can express our position on certain laws. President Draghi has actually given a strong acceleration to the vaccination campaign, which is fundamental for the safety of our country. And now the government has to carry on the reforms. So the intermediate bodies have a very important role to play because in representing their own interests, they have to support the whole country. So this is my message. Let's talk. Let's sit around the same table in this very delicate moment for our country, because we are all saying there will be a growth by 5%. But the pre-COVID levels won't be reached before the end of 2022. So, and we will still be 4 points below the GDP of 2008. So we still have a long way to go, a very long way to go. So I let you rest for a bit, and I move to President Bardelli. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about these worries about the government of the action of the government and the action of the political parties? Mario Draghi was was a guest here at the meeting last year. Mr. Vittini said he was like Ronaldo at the time, the football player. So, well, I would like to hear what you think about the fact that there are ambitions on the part of political parties and reforms. Well, I'm not going to dwell on the football metaphor because, we wear different colors, so well. But what I can say is that important things were done. The vaccination plan is obviously a primary question, and it is also a responsibility of everyone to understand the importance of this. The Pope spoke clearly about the responsibility for the common good, so well, for a choice that it's not individual to protect ourselves and our families, but rather a choice that protects the whole country. So I think that a government that has invested in this way has really played a fundamental role. And there is another aspect we do appreciate of the Draghi government, apart from some interventions by certain ministers, is that we finally are now witnessing a turn towards pragmatism. So reality is now prevailing over ideas, which doesn't mean that ideas are not important. And when President Bonomi talked about many different interesting ideas, the idea of social bodies, the rediscovery of our social responsibility, which doesn't mean that we do not have any ideas. The questions I was talking about in my previous intervention can give way to ideas that are then the subject of a dialogue, and that are actually ideas based on realities. They are not ideologies. We have ideas, not ideologies. So maybe with this government, we are actually really meeting the need for reforms that are based on reality rather than ideology. And I have two aspects that I would like to share with you. And first of all, the dialogue. A very interesting sentence, a statement of a former Minister of Labour said, when in Italy there is a problem, someone always says, we need a new law. Well, this is not true. The debate on vaccination goes below behind the law, and we really need to talk about this. As President Bonomi was saying, we should sit around the same table now and talk about it, because if we rather choose to pass new laws, it's as if we were avoiding our personal responsibilities. Then there is another aspect. How can we change our position by imposing a change which is necessary sometimes, but also underlying some diversity. So this is actually the great opportunity we have nowadays for enterprises, and it's in a way what President Bonomi said. He says, I don't need a law that shows that I am right. I'd rather sit around a table with the trade union representatives, for instance, and discuss. So I think this is the best way to move on. So we have our responsibilities towards our staff, towards our competitors, towards our co-citizens. So well, and then there is another aspect which is, I believe, really fundamental. That is to say, that of education and schools, young people, and access to the labor market. So as entrepreneurs, we really need to wage a battle in this sense. We cannot put up with bottlenecks anymore. There is a need for a strong need for training and education, and here again we need to discuss about the kind of training we need. I was talking with some people in Milan who told me that there are no public state technical schools in Milan. There are some private ones, but well, the public sector should be present. And then the idea of the fact that access to labor market can work in cooperation with private subjects is something we cannot accept anymore. This means that we need to start a dialogue. If there are some laws that are needed, that is okay, but the solution can come only from a dialogue. So this is what we have to do together in the next few months.
Siamo in chiusura, per chi deve andare a mangiare aspetti 5 minuti.
So we'll be done in 5 minutes, and then we can all have lunch. Let's go back to politics. I have the impression, and this is my personal opinion, that Italian political leaders seem to neglect that Italy could actually, in a way, overcome this difficult situation because we are in an open-ended economy. So this is our strength. So it is, well, actually quite surprising that in one hand, we pass a law against multinationals, and then we ask international companies like Intel to have their plants in Italy. So I have the impression that Italian leaders have, well, a very limited vision. Well, they do not look at reality. I go back to figures. Why did that famous floor resist? Because of exports and because of the international vocation of our small and medium enterprises. And this must be our starting point. We will always be on an open market. We have no choice, but politicians and decision makers don't seem to understand this. We talk about reshoring, and on the other hand, you have to punish those who shut down enterprises. We can work together on this issue. We have to work together. This is true, but when we had the news about the draft decree by Minister Orlando, my counterpart in Spain called me and asked me to thank the Italian minister for this decision, because if you have this in Italy this law, everyone will invest in Spain. So thank you. And well, this is not what we want, obviously. Once again, I'm available. I'm ready to talk with the representatives of political parties in order to identify existing problems, because some choices, some behaviors cannot be accepted, but we have to work together in order to attract rather than punish. There is always this attitude, but why do we want to punish the most important asset of our country? This is not how things work. I have a completely different opinion. I believe that we need to aim at economic sustainability in order to help social sustainability and other forms of sustainability, including environmental sustainability. And well, we see the Italian industry as if it was a third world industry. But in industrial waste disposal, Italy is the second country in the world. But again, there are ideological approaches. Sugar tax, plastic tax, when they realized the impact on the supply chain, these taxes were actually blocked. And they have not come into force, because well, that would be a disaster. So again, the minister and the undersecretary have an idea. Why didn't they decide to call us and ask us what we think about the possible solutions to certain problems, how to attract investments in Italy, for instance, because if 90% of the cases are that are on the papers are in the automotive sector. Is that a problem of every single multinational company, or is it a problem due to a new organization of the whole sector at a global level? Confindustria has been warning about the automotive sector as many other sectors, because we have the everyday experience. So there is a world transformation ongoing at the moment. Attilio and Emanuela said that very clearly. And this acceleration was actually made even faster by the pandemic. So there are transformations around the world, and we need to be able to see these transformations, and we need to help the enterprises that are our assets so that they can also take part in these transformations. But we do not have to shut them down. So, for instance, digital transition, energy transition, environmental transition, all this goes together. So we don't have to switch enterprises off. We need to accompany these enterprises towards this kind of transitions. So, for instance, enterprises could adopt technologies that are then cancelled. So this is not a fair way to behave. This is not a real dialogue with enterprises. I believe in dialogue. I say it again. I'm ready, but I have the impression that, on the other side, they're not as ready as I am. Are you satisfied of this first, so to speak, part of your presidency? And can you say something on the future of your presidency? Well, let's say that when I put my name forward in January 2020, the world was a different place. But, a good sailor is proven when the sea is rough. So that's something that we have to do. I have the honor to lead and represent Italian entrepreneurs in the most critical moment, even more difficult than it was during the war. We can do better, we can do more. I'm really happy because for me it is an honor to represent Italian entrepreneurs for what they do every day. We all see the world, we see airports, we see situations that are completely different in our airports, for instance. But once we get through the airport doors, we are in the most beautiful country of the world. I'm really in love with my country, and I will do my best for my country, also in the future. So I'm really happy to do what I do. Thank you.
Allora estenderei l'applauso a tutti e quattro.
So, well, a big round of applause for our four guests.
Grazie e buon pranzo.
Thank you all for being here.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Generali, partner di vita.
In un mondo che non sta mai fermo, il bello è avere sempre nuove soluzioni e continuare a crearne. Any Life Station, puoi farci anche rifornimento.
Noi di Conad siamo vicino a Claudia, che cerca convenienza in ogni suo acquisto, dagli alimenti più freschi ai prodotti per la casa, per la salute e per il benessere. Abbiamo tanti Conad, tutti diversi, per essere vicino alle vostre esigenze.
Più investiamo nel presente, prima raggiungiamo il futuro. Questa è l'idea che ci spinge ogni giorno a muovere il nostro paese verso la ripresa, a dare a tutti nuovi percorsi da seguire, a usare l'innovazione per essere più liberi di crescere, a esportare la nostra eccellenza italiana nel mondo, ad anticipare i cambiamenti per costruire un domani più sostenibile con tutti voi. Perché il futuro è la nostra destinazione, solo se è un viaggio che facciamo insieme.
Generali, partner di vita.
In un mondo che non sta mai fermo, il bello è avere sempre nuove soluzioni e continuare a crearne. Any Life Station, puoi farci anche rifornimento.
Noi di Conad siamo vicino a Claudia, che cerca convenienza in ogni suo acquisto, dagli alimenti più freschi ai prodotti per la casa, per la salute e per il benessere. Abbiamo tanti Conad, tutti diversi, per essere vicino alle vostre esigenze.